What I'm looking for in a bank is one that's looking out for me, like NBT. I want a relationship and a team that supports me in my dreams. And when life gets challenging, I need a bank that's focused on what matters. Not to mention one that's been top-rated by Forbes in trust, customer service, financial advice, and more. That's why when it comes to meeting my banking needs, it's always NBT. Learn more at nbtbank.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in. This is Tom Hickey from 2020 Media, and you are listening to NBT Bank's On the Scene podcast, reaching over 250,000 readers of WeHa.com, West Hartford Magazine, and the Jewish Ledger. And live 24/7, 365. I can't forget that. Before we introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Bob Carr, and say hello, Bob.
Hey, hello, Tom. Tom Hickey, along with myself, Coach McCarty, and Ronnie Newton is a founder and partner in WeHa.com. Tom brings to West Hartford the best of West Hartford, which we just had our 11th anniversary. The Taste of West Hartford, there's one coming up this coming April, as well as West Hartford Magazine, which is West Hartford's original lifestyle magazine. Our podcast is assembled by the Modern Observer Group of Middletown, Connecticut. And today our guest is Dennis House, news anchor at WTNH, Channel 8 in New Haven. Morning, Dennis.
Good morning, Bob and Tom. Great to be here. Really excited about it.
It's great
glad
to
to have you. So I was reading a little bit of your bio, and I noticed that you interviewed President Trump in 2015 and Kamala Harris. But the one thing that really stood out for me was that you interviewed Ronald Reagan back when you were a young man and starting out in the business. How did you get that interview? And tell us a little bit about that.
So I was a rookie anchor in Rockford, Illinois at the ABC station. It's about 90 miles west of Chicago. And I hadn't been on the job all that long, and we learned that Ronald Reagan was coming to Dixon, Illinois to see his childhood home that had been transformed into a museum. It had just opened into a museum. He grew up in outside of Rockford, and so went down to Dixon, and they said, listen, the former president, he had just left office, is not going to take any questions. He's going to go in, take a tour, and then he's going to leave, and that's it. You need to stand behind the yellow line. So I did that, and then I thought to myself, this kind of stinks. We need to talk to Ronald Reagan. We need to hear from him, right? The great communicator.
Yeah.
So I went around to the backyard with my crew, and I thought, what guy doesn't want to see his childhood backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sure enough, we went back there, and he walked out, and he walked around the yard, and he walked right by me, and I shouted out a couple of questions, and he was relatively close to me. So I didn't really like to shout them, and he answered them, and that was it. I got this great exclusive. I was the only one to get this. Looking back on it, what I learned from years of reporting is that I should have asked him how he felt to be back home. Instead, I was the rookie guy, and I wanted to ask serious questions. So I asked about what he thought about the Democrats in Congress at the time, and what he thought about Saddam Hussein, who I think had just invaded Kuwait. And so I asked him like serious questions, but back in, what did I know, right?
Yeah, right. Because that was great. Hey, and if you weren't a rookie, nobody else would have gone into the backyard, right? There you go.
That's true. I was kind of aggressive at the time, and I was like, let's just, hey, you always wanted to like shine and get the best story you could. Oh. And so I decided, let's go to the backyard instead of, hey, they don't want us in the front yard. That's fine. We'll go to the backyard. We did.
And Dennis, did you always know that you wanted to do this, or how did, what happened? Was there an awakening someday or something, or, what?
So my parents were massive news consumers of television news. And of course, back in the day, before cable and all that, you gathered around the TV to watch things.
Uh-huh.
People don't really do that as much now. They might do it for the Super Bowl or something like that. But right now, you might have a kid in one room watching something on a device. You might have someone else, rushing home to the 6 o'clock news. Doesn't happen like it used to. No. But back in the day, we'd all sit around. And so I grew up watching news. And one of the key moments in my life, I guess, was when I was a kid, was the blizzard of 78. I remember a lot of the news coverage and thinking that was really, really cool. And I remember watching news stories. Also, when I was in high school, President Reagan was shot. And so I remember watching that at length, all the live coverage of that day. It was March of 1981. And I remember, as first they didn't know, first they didn't think he had been shot. And then about an hour into it, they learned he had been shot. He had gone to the hospital. And so there were all these things breaking. I just kind of loved the nature of that news developing. And so I kind of knew I kind of wanted to do it then.
Yeah, that's neat. I have to tell you this story, and I'll be quick about it because I don't think I've ever told you before, but and I'll date myself by saying this because the Hilton in Hartford was still standing, and you
Yes.
were the guests of honor at the Assumption College enrollment. I don't know what it was. I think it was for accepted students, or something. And
Oh, yeah.
we weren't going to go, my son and I and my wife, because he had some big baseball, thing or whatever. But anyway, make a long story short, he went to the event in his baseball uniform, because that was the only way we didn't have time to change or, schedule anything. And he was mortified because he's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so embarrassing. Well, you were great. You didn't care. And you introduced us, and you probably don't even remember, but you introduced us to Justin Smith, I think was his name. He was the head of, I don't know, but admissions, the head of admissions.
Okay.
Whatever. And anyway, that day is what made my son decide he was going to go to Assumption College. So,
That's great.
So you can take credit for that.
Go Hounds. Go
Yeah,
Hounds.
absolutely. It's funny.
That's
So,
awesome. What a great story.
So
Yeah.
in your career, you interviewed tons of people. Is there anybody who surprised you? Like when you were doing an interview, like you expected something different from them and they ended up surprising you?
Well, it's interesting. Over the years, sometimes, I'll prepare for an interview, but you don't always know what the answers are going to be. You try to anticipate what the answers will be, but every so often you'll get something that is completely out of the blue, right? And I've had that happen a few times during interviews where we've had to sort of change course. And some of the things I thought I'd be questioning about, I don't, because they said something that now created a whole new line of questioning. So that has happened. I can't think. There's a couple specific things with candidates who've done things like that. But for the most part, what you see is what you get on a lot of these people, although some are very, you just don't know. And I have an interview that's coming up this Sunday on This Week in Connecticut and WTNH with a potential candidate for governor. And I'd never met her before. And she was kind of surprising to get in there. So look for that.
Yeah, I will. Great. Is there, I know that you and Kara Sutherland are very involved with the Denise, D'Ascenzo's, foundation. How did that just come to be because of the closeness that you had when you worked together with her, or?
So Denise used to say that if she wasn't in television, she wanted to have a foundation someday. And she wanted to raise money and give it away to people who were less fortunate and needed, a variety of the various issues. And so when she passed away, her husband and I and daughter and Carr got together and we decided to create the Denise D'Ascenzo Foundation, which is now over 5 years old. Denise passed away suddenly in December of 2019. It was awful. And, we created it really just as COVID was beginning. It was a tough time to begin a foundation, but now we've given away over $1 million to various charities in 5 years. And our events are growing every year. I serve as president. I'm really excited about that. And we just had our Human Spirit Awards dinner in November, which was just so amazing. We honored several people, some that you might know and some that you might not. Former State Senator Ted Kennedy Jr. was one of our recipients, Nelva Marquez Green, who lost her daughter at Sandy Hook. And so all these people have been through extraordinary setbacks and yet have turned things around to give back to the community. So this foundation is just remarkable. And there are people supporting it from all over, including all 4 television stations in Connecticut support this foundation, which is really unusual that we all come together for this. And, shortly after Denise died, there was COVID, and then I got fired from Channel 3. So quickly hired by Channel 8. And so, we have a lot of different stations involved, which is good. And so that's very helpful.
Well, I will publicly say, without even talking to Bob or Ronnie or Hilly or anybody else about it, but we don't do enough to help you. You are so supportive of everything that we do, be it APK charities, be it Fire and Ice, Hanukkah celebration, whatever, Best of West Hartford, we made you dance, with Ronnie, so we need to be more involved and help bring the reality it already has, because you've given away $1 million, but I think there's so much more that we could do to be involved as well. So
Tom,
I'll say that, and you can hold us to that.
well, Tom, I appreciate that. And even getting an opportunity to discuss it here on your podcast is super, super helpful. But, the Denise D'Ascenzo Foundation is doing some great things for women and kids and health and all these things. So there's a lot of different journalism. There's a lot of different issues that we cover. And so, we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Where will you find West Hartford's best and most comprehensive business news? At weha.com. Subscribe to the weha.com newsletter Business Buzz for free every Monday at weha.com. Log on to we-ha.com. We have it all in West Hartford.
Just to make it a little lighter here, I was reading some of your bio, and you were had an antique. Was it Buick? And am I correct in that? And then, so we were discussing off air here that you no longer have that, but you're looking for another one. What kind of cars do you like, and what's the attraction for that particular brand or model?
So I grew up in born in the 60s, and back then I was like a nerd. I could identify almost every car, but also if you go back to the 60s and 70s and even 80s, there were models changed almost every year, and there were a lot of different colors. Nowadays, a lot of the cars look alike, the different brands, and they come in 6 shades of gray and maybe a red and a blue. So it's not quite, we are not in this golden age of automobiles right now. I don't think anyway. But back in the day, it was kind of cool. So I do love antique cars. My affinity is for the ones with the old fins, maybe from like late 1950s, early 1960s, the Chryslers. I love those old big ones, but they sell for a lot of money. Whenever I can, I try to interview people who are involved in this. Wayne Carini of Chasing Classic Cars out of Portland is amazing. He has the Buick Roadmaster convertible that was in the film Rain Man.
Oh, wow.
And it's based here in Connecticut, and he uses it to raise money for autism. His daughter has autism, and so he uses this car. It's actually owned by Barry Levinson, who directed the movie. But Barry took the car from the film and got it restored through Wayne and a whole bit. There are just so many great stories. Bud Wilkinson, who writes a column for CT Insider, is out there. You just never know what people have in their garages. So I always try to buy a car that is not, I like to buy a good car, but I don't want to get a hot seller, right? I want to make sure that my car kind of sticks out a little bit, like it's something unique. And I used to have this Pontiac Sunbird convertible. Probably people don't even remember what that was, but, and they were cheap. They were cheap cars in the 1980s, late 80s. But I'll tell you, I just read an article, because one came on online as an antique now, and there were only like 1,200 convertibles. So there weren't that many. So I kind of liked that I had a unique one. But my antique Buick was a Buick Electra 225 that barely fit in our garage. And we had it for 10 years, and I no longer have it, but I am looking for something else. I've had a couple Buick Roadmaster station wagons. I had a Buick Enclave wagon that I just got rid of, and I had the wood put on the side of that, but I bought a new one. So I think I'm going to do that as well. I'm trying to work out the design things. So I love cars. I love unique cars. I love ones that you don't see that often.
Yeah.
Well, I do love the Buick Electra.
I miss chrome. Don't you guys miss chrome?
I miss chrome. Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a pain in the neck to have to, shine it, shine away, but I'm like, come on, where's the chrome these days?
And I'll tell you what I'm kind of sick of too with cars. Almost every car has those shiny black wheels now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're kind of cool, but they're kind of like common now.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's got
every car is silver. Every car seems to, not every car, but most, you go on the road and you look at these colors, and some of the cars are cool, but most of them are just that some shade of gray, like you said.
Yeah.
Silver, gray, etc. And it doesn't really, and they all do look quite a bit alike, but there's very few unique models out there. So, the Electra 225 is a great car. I love that car.
Yeah, that was amazing. It was big and powerful. We called it Beulah. That was the name Clara came up with. She just said Beulah the Buick. It seemed like an appropriate name because, anyway.
We're about halfway through, so I'll use this as an opportunity to acknowledge and thank again our sponsor, MBT Bank, for bringing On the Scene podcast to all of our listeners. And Dennis, if anyone has any specific questions for you, or just wants to jot you a quick message, how do they reach you?
Sure. The best way to get a hold of me is you can email me at dennis.house@wtnh.com. I'm also on Instagram at Dennis House TV and Twitter, Dennis House TV, and Facebook at Dennis House 3. And I'll tell you a little bit about WTNH. We're the only station with 2 locations. We're in downtown Hartford on 10 Columbus Boulevard, the Candy Cane building. We have an amazing studio that overlooks the whole city. Great view. And then we're also in New Haven. And we cover the entire state. We are Connecticut's ABC station. And over time, and I'd like to say that our team's amazing, and I'm proud to be a part of it, but our 6 o'clock news is now the most watched news in all of Connecticut. So if you ever have a story idea, and I love telling stories of people, and please let me know. Once again, dennis.house@wtnh.com. And tips, things like that. I never have ever revealed the source. I have sources in a lot of places. But I love interviewing the people who have just fascinating stories to tell, the ones that don't get this stories to tell. People always ask me, have you ever interviewed a celebrity? What's your favorite interview? Well, it's not really a celebrity interview. I'll tell you one of them. One of my favorite stories of all time was when I was, this was probably late 90s, and there had been a lot of shootings on Garden Street in Hartford. And they would make the news all the time. And I'm like, there's a deeper story here, because this is someone's neighborhood, right? And so we interviewed some kids, what it was like. And, what is it like to grow up in a street where, maybe you can't go out late at night, or, you hear gunshots. And it was really touching, and the fears that some of these kids had. And then we followed up like 3 or 4 years later, and these 2 friends we had interviewed, one had went down one path, one had gone down to a path to success. So I like the stories of, just like different things, West Hartford Center, when they redid all their parking. I know it was controversial, but what we didn't know, I'll tell you, one great thing about West Hartford is the parking spots are bigger than they are in downtown Hartford. And we got a lot of complaints from people who would come to Hartford to go to Bushnell or skating or whatever. And there's so many great events in downtown Hartford, but they would take their Chevy Suburban with 4 kids from West Hartford, and they wouldn't be able to fit in a spot.
Right.
And then they get a ticket.
Yeah.
And so we measured the parking spots, and the parking spots around Bushnell Park are smaller than the ones in West Hartford Center. So you're not imagining things.
Yeah.
And the argument was, when we checked in with the city of Hartford, they're like, we want to encourage people to drive more fuel efficient cars. Listen, I love the city of Hartford, lived there for a long time, but that's not, to me, your concern ought to be other things, not worried about what people are driving.
That's right. Absolutely. That's too fun.
So curiosity, it seems like curiosity is a big part of what you do, right? So it seems that makes you successful and makes WTNH successful now because you're there. I'm going to put a plug in, because you did say you're the #1 news source in Connecticut at 6 o'clock, which is great. Is that curiosity something you've always had?
Yeah, I think curiosity is, when you go in, you question, when you look at a scene, right? Why is that happening? That's our job, is to figure out, like, one of the big stories this week, and this is a terrible story, but, Waterbury, it didn't have water for 4 or 5 days. And then when they finally restored it yesterday, as of our taping, you still couldn't drink it. And so what led to that? And, one thing that we kind of forget about is Connecticut is we're a super old place, right? And a lot of the infrastructure is super old. I'm the guy who, like, when I pass the construction site where they're digging in the street, I'd like to look down there, because I like to see what's down there.
Right.
And in some parts of Connecticut, they are digging through cobblestone. They're digging through, these pipes in many places are over 100 years old. Now think about that just for a second, right? And so the pipe rots or crushes or breaks, and then you gotta dig it out, and you gotta put a new one in, and then the one a block away breaks. So that's the curiosity factor. What led to that water main problem in Waterbury? And the story is much deeper, pardon the pun. I mean, big, but it's about these pipes being super, super old, and are they maintained, and how do you do it? And, it's not easy to just change your pipe, because you got to rip up the street.
Yeah, right. It's funny as you say that because I had a relative, I won't mention names, and it was not in Waterbury, but her pipes burst, and she was it's a horrible experience. She was
Yeah, sure.
freaking out over the whole thing and trying to get it fixed. And the very first thing out of my mouth was, "How old's your house?" It's 125 years old. It's just like, be glad nothing's happened for 125 years. Now you have to fix it. But the drama is like, it's so different now. Like, you have to have permits for everything. And then when they were doing the, what do you call it, excavation, to put in the new
Sure.
pipes, there was a burial ground, that no one knew about that was there. So then that delayed it. I mean, it's like, it just compounded, all of this, drama into it. But I think that's we live in New England. We live
Yeah,
in
I think,
an old
yeah,
town.
I mean, curiosity is what fuels a lot of journalists. Like, for example, a couple weeks ago, there's this dramatic video of a truck wiping out on I-84 in West Hartford where the highway curves, right near the exit to get to Raymond Road and all that. I forget what the exit is actually called. Is it South Main Street, whatever
West
it's
Main
called.
Street?
That exit
Yeah,
there.
Park Road.
I mean, I've been driving it for years, but I forget what the official name is. So, as we start to dig and get curious about it, well, why are there so many accidents there? Because in today's day and age, if that highway were built today, it would never have that curve. They wouldn't allow it. But back when they were constructing the highway, who knew that this would happen? But historically, there are a lot of accidents there.
Yeah, it's true. Very true.
So you mentioned journalism, and one of the things that I talk about all the time with other folks is that journalists have a career that is about finding out the truth and finding out information, whereas a lot of the media, and I'm using media as like Twitter or Instagram or whatever, that really isn't news, and so defining it. People think it's news, but it really isn't, because you have a career that's based on finding out the information. So, you kind of walk us through that a little bit. What the difference between what you do and say someone who is just a pontificator like Tom and I are right now on on this podcast.
Well, I always tell people that if you're, there's so many more choices on television and online than there used to be, even 20 years ago. And when I hear people say, well, I heard on Rachel Maddow last night, or I heard on Sean Hannity last night. Well, if those are your two sources, if that's all you rely on is one, well, you're not getting the full story. You're getting a tainted or an opinionated version of the news of the day, because those two are at opposite extremes, right? And you want to be somewhere in the middle to get all the sides. And so, listen, I get criticized a lot. I'll get an email from someone, or usually it's an anonymous tweet or something like that, who will say, "Oh, you're not asking the right questions." Everyone has their agenda, right? When I do an interview, and a Democrat may not like it, and a Republican may not like it, and depending on who we have on, I get criticized a lot for having a lot of Democrats on my show. Well, part of it is that the Democrats are in all the elected positions. And so we have the governor's a Democrat, right? And there's not always a Republican counterpart to that person. If you're doing a campaign, sure. If we interviewed Governor Lamont, during the campaign, we will get the Republican response to that. But when you're just the sitting governor and no one's running against you, that's why the Democrat's going to be on all the time. And Democratic senators, we have both our senators are Democrats. The entire congressional delegation is Democrats. You look at West Hartford, Democrats are, in charge. So while we try to get both sides, it's not always as easy as you think.
Right.
There's not always someone on the other side.
Yeah.
And I tell people, if you don't like it, elect some new people.
Right, absolutely true. Well, I want to point out that Dennis is wearing a Yukon shirt and a Yard Goats hat. So the only thing we don't have is a Whalers outfit. So the Whalers colors are on your hat. But other than that, I mean, that's pretty cool. So
Well, I do have Whaler stuff as well.
Good. I will. I mean, that's the team of Connecticut that no longer exists, right? The Hartford Whalers. Who doesn't love them?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Whalers are they're a big part of our history. In fact, I always live on because there's a Whalers documentary that I was a part of, and I did a report in I think it was March of 1997 when the Whalers announced they were leaving, and that thing lives on. And every year, someone posts it. My report on them leaving.
Exactly. All right. Bob, any more questions? Because we're almost out of time.
No, I think we're good. Dennis has been great. We appreciate
Yeah,
you being
we
on.
have to have you back, Dennis. This took long enough for anyone listening to try to get us all together, but we'll do a better job, next time, and we'll have you on again.
Yeah, I'd love to be on. I love West Hartford. It's a big part of my life. My kids went to school in West Hartford, and I coached football and basketball in West Hartford.
There you go.
I coached West Hartford flag football, which I'll give them a shout out. It's an amazing league, and this year they started it for girls.
Oh,
so
I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah, it's a big story. Good podcast topic for you guys. But so
Yeah.
girls used to be able to play with the boys. But now they have their own league of their own, so to speak, right here in West Hartford, one of the first. And, they're really trying to get girls flag football as a recognized sport in high school sports. And I know that Hall and Conard are starting clubs this fall next fall for the girls. So, which is a huge step. We're very excited about that. And then, and I will say, Dave Seymour, my assistant coach in West Hartford, we won the championship one year flag football. So, as a dad, it's kind of a big deal, right? Yeah. And we also won. I coached basketball one year with Rick Bush, who's from West Hartford.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He was the head coach, and we won the championship that year as well. So that's exciting.
I love it. Sometime we'll have to have a separate podcast on and just talk about sports teams and championships, because maybe I'll get my son to come on, because he tells you'll laugh your head off. He tells a great story about how I went to the draft to pick up years ago. I coached a team. What was it? I guess maybe it was Legion. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I felt so badly for the kids when I went to the draft that were not being chosen. Because they were that good. That's how I picked on my kids. I picked. It was like a bunch of misfits, my son calls it, but we won the championship. I just said, see, you just had to give all these kids a chance. That's all it was.
Well, it's funny, when I was tapped to be, I was at my son's very first basketball practice this one year, and Rick Bush came over to me and goes, you look kind of athletic. You want to be an assistant coach? I'm like, basketball's not my sport. He goes, don't worry about it. I'll teach you. And we worked really hard, because he played for UConn briefly. I think it was a walk-on at Calhoun, but and so it was great, and Rick and I became great friends, and it was a great experience, and we won the championship, which was super, super exciting.
Absolutely. All right. Well, again, we are out of time. Now we're over, but
That's right.
Well, that was my fault. We'll remind people to do is to follow Dennis on social media. Send him a message. I love the idea of curiosity and story ideas if people want to share them with you. One more time, Dennis, what's the email address at work? Dennis.house@WTNH.com. And I encourage you to watch WTNH News 8, Connecticut's ABC station, every night at 6 and 11. And Sunday mornings at 10 for my show This Week in Connecticut. All right. Sounds good. In the meantime, everybody, enjoy the holidays. Be safe, be well, and we'll talk to you in 2026.
Guys, thanks for having me on.
What I'm looking for in a bank is one that's looking out for me, like NBT. I want a relationship and a team that supports me in my dreams. And when life gets challenging, I need a bank that's focused on what matters. Not to mention one that's been top rated by Forbes in trust, customer service, financial advice, and more. That's why when it comes to meeting my banking needs, it's always NBT. Learn more at nbtbank.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.